Today I'm working on making a new improved version of this little toy loom. Welcome to Hack a Week. So Lisa and I both got into weaving. I've done some other videos on weaving. I don't know, it's got to be at least 6-8 years ago, something like that. We found this rug loom at an antique store, bought it, brought it home, got it set up. Totally went down that rabbit hole of weaving. I've since built a couple of looms. We've purchased a few more. And Lisa absolutely loves this one. She uses another one too to make wider products. This one makes scarves, and she's made dozens and dozens of scarves on this. She loves it, but it's getting a little bit rickety. It's getting a little worn out. It's a little bit clunky in places. It's called a toy loom for a reason. It does work. It's a nice introduction to weaving, but I would like to take this basic design where everything's laid out and just make it a little better, a little bit nicer. Make the sides out of some plywood. Do a little different mechanism rather than this pawl and gear assembly that it has here. Do something with 3D printing to do that, like one of the other looms I made. So I've got a drawing started here of the basic points that I need to worry about, which are where the take-up spool and the warp spool go, the back beam, breast beam, the height of this dowel right here, which is where the strings go to the braces that move them up and down to create the shed. So as you're weaving, this is the beater. So you do one of the passes with the shuttle and you beat it, you change sheds and do another pass with the shuttle back the other way, beat it, change sheds, etc., etc. So I've got to pretty much duplicate everything you see here, but I want to do it with plywood sides, make it look pretty, and it's going to be a Christmas gift. Okay, let's fast forward to all the doodling I did. That's what I came up with, and I've cut out a template, and I might drill some holes with a hole saw through here just to lighten things up a little bit, but I'm going to wait until after I get the pieces cut out. This is purposely made this way for a little more reinforcement here because all of the warp running through here is under tension, so I want to make sure it stays good and strong. And you have to reach in through here when you're winding it up, dressing the loom is what it's called, to put in some little cardboard strips as you roll up the warp. We'll see that later when we go ahead and dress this for the first time. But there's my template, so I just need to transfer this now to my piece of plywood, cut out 2 pieces. There's one on the left, one on the right, and we'll start assembling. I got the template pinned out here on my piece of oak. I found a nice piece of oak, so I'm going to use that. I'm just going to use a Sharpie. I've used this technique before. If you just hold down the paper and just trace along the edge, you'll get a nice sharp line, and you just keep your cut on the line and cut up to where there is no Sharpie mark, and you end up with a pretty good clean cut. Then of course, once it's all done, we'll go over it with the sander. Then we're going to do a nice little round over with the router, and it's going to look pretty. There we go, all laid out, and then we'll cut it out with a jigsaw. Remember all those tacks I had holding my template on? Well, there's a little spot on the wood that shows me where that's at, where the holes need to be drilled, so I'm just going to pilot it a tiny bit, and then I am going to drill them all the way through with a paddle bit. So the way I do these is I drill partway through just to where it pokes through the other side, then I flip it over and drill from that side. Then I get a nice clean hole and I don't get any kind of splintering on the exit side. And now it's cleanup time. This is how I like to work. When I'm done doing a task, I clean up the mess I made doing that task. Then when I'm all done with the project, there's no big cleanup. and I don't have crap everywhere. I'm gonna get out my trusty Dyson DC31. I picked this thing up on eBay for like 40 bucks. It needed a battery. You can get the batteries on Amazon. I love these. I've got, I think, at least 4 Dyson products. No endorsement here or anything from Dyson. I just love the product. They're great. These things are so handy in a workshop. So if you look around on eBay, you can pick them up pretty cheap. I've got the edges all nice and sanded smooth, and I'm going to just do a nice little round over with my router here. I've got just a nice little finish router. So let's see, this spins clockwise. That means the cut is going to go like this, right? That's the way I want to cut. I want to go into it like that and work that way. Not this way, because that's a climbing cut and it's going to want to yank on you, and then you get that whole Adam Savage, I'm scared of the router bullshit. If you use it the right way, it's not that scary of a tool. See, look at that. It didn't fly out of my hands. I didn't lose any fingers. Yeah. And we're done. Nice. I'll go over this with my random orbital. I've got it set up on the bench right now with one of the braces and the beater in there. That's also known as the reed, by the way. There's lots of different terms for these parts of a loom, but anyway, I'm going to give you the most common ones. So let's see. I got a breast beam here that goes in this top hole. That does not have to rotate. That can be glued in. The dowel that goes across the bottom that carries the string that will allow the braces to move up and down, that one can be glued in place. The back beam, that can be glued in place. So that's 1, 2, 3 places where I can add a dowel across and glue it into place. And the take-up dowel, that has to rotate. The warp holding dowel has to rotate. This top one has to rotate. So I think it's going to be strong enough just by gluing in this one, this one, this one, this one, and that one. That's 3 places where it's held together. I'll try it that way. If it feels like it's a little bit flexy, maybe I can always add a piece of wood across here, maybe 4 inches wide, and just tag it together that way. Got those 3 dowels glued in, and it is really stable and stiff. No worries. So now I need to assemble the bars that are going to hold the beater. So the frame for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my table saw, take a piece of cherry wood I have, and cut a slit in it so that this can set in that slit on a top piece and a bottom piece, and then 2 pieces that will go on the side to capture it. Then we're going to attach it to this so that it can swing back and forth. That should be deep enough depth of cut. It should be just enough to just go on there, but not go into the area where the holes are. Just deep enough to hold it. Probably going to have to make a couple passes to get that width. Perfect. I'm ready to cut my slotted pieces to length. So I've got the beater here. I think I'll just use it like this, like a ruler. we're just going to mark it on a piece of wood, and then we'll take this over to the cutoff saw and cut it. I like this saw because it's got a light that shines the shadow of the blade right there, and I can see right where it's going to cut off. I'm going to stay just a little bit away from the line, give myself a little bit of wiggle room. That's one more, and then all right, nice and even, equal length. See how the fit is. Just right, leaves me just a little bit of room on each end. Perfect. So then now what's going to happen, these two go like this, and these two go on the sides like so, and we're going to glue these to these. So now we need to figure out how to attach this besides just glue. I think what I'm going to do is clamp it together, get everything lined up, clamp it, drill a tiny hole in each side, a little bit smaller than a finishing nail, then put some glue on all the joints, clamp it again, and then tap the finishing nail in, and then just let the glue set. Little smear with the finger. Always best to put glue on both parts. And just let the excess squish out. Okay. Framing hammer, a little overkill, but whatever. If I get this reasonably close, it should just self-align as it gets to that hole. Okay, that's one. A little wipe down with a damp rag. Get the excess glue off. There we go. I've got a ruler laid down where the warp is going to go, and we want the middle part of the beater to pretty much be right in the middle part of where the warp is. Right about here is where the hole was on the other loom for the beater to pivot on. So I'm going to just kind of line it up there and see about where we end up, because I want the middle of this beater to line up with that. So if I just let it sit on the bench, right now it's a little bit high, which is not an entirely bad thing, but these could be shortened just a little bit and then rounded off. So I think I'll cut just a bit off from these. But before I do that, I think what I'll do is drill my holes right here. I've got a 1/4 bolt I'm going to run through there for it to pivot on. Okay, this is cut off, and I'm going to drill a hole centered about 10 millimeters above the bottom. I'm just going to use the calipers to scratch that distance in there. Drop this in. Ooh, look at that. Just fits so nice and snug. I think I measured it and planned ahead. Wait a minute, I did. This is interesting. I'm using some extra toilet bowl closet bolts. What holds the toilet to the floor. I just happen to have an extra set of those around, and the reason I picked them is because I've got then this nice little flush thing on the side. Look at that. That's a beautiful thing. They can go all the way to there, and the beater will push the weft into my work. So right about there. So that leaves that much room to run the shuttle back and forth. That's nice. Those bolts are a bit longer than they need to be, so I'm going to put a nut up next to it, and then I'm going to mark where I need to just cut away some. I anchored that in place with some nylocks. That way I could get the tension just right and the nut will stay in place. So that's that part done. The beater is operational. However, I think I'm going to pull it back off and do a little sanding on it. Just round off the corners a little bit of chamfer on the edges. Okay, a little bit of sanding, rounding off, looks much nicer. The next step is to get these dowels, let's see, the take-up dowel, the warp winding dowel, and the top brace movement dowel, for lack of calling them anything else. These fit pretty tight, which is fine if you're gluing it together, but I want these to be able to rotate easily. Get out the Dremel, actually the Craftsman rotary tool, it's a Dremel. We're going to just smooth the inside of that a little bit. Okay, now what? Well, I'll tell you what. This has to go in here. It's going to rotate like that. And we need to keep it centered in there because it's going to float freely. And I've 3D printed some rings that will fit over this dowel. I could use just a little more smoothing. It needs to move really, really easy, but these fit tight, so they're going to go on there and keep it spaced in the middle for moving back and forth. Reinstalled with the rings in place, and you know what? I had that on there, so I had to kind of like fudge that in from a weird angle because that was a mistake I made. Mistakes happen. They're all over in my YouTube videos. I leave them there on purpose just to show people I am not beyond making a mistake, and the trick is learn from the mistake. So next time I do anything like this, I've got to realize don't put the dowel in until you shove it through the holes, you silly maker guy. These are glued in place with just a drop of that stuff, AK Fix 705, CA glue, and the accelerator that goes with it. Stuff's awesome. I discovered this from a Adam Savage tested video. He uses it all the time. So do I. I've got it at a lot of my workbenches. This stuff is great. All right, let's move on to the other dowels. Now it's time to install these two dowels. The one that takes up the woven thing and the one that holds the warp. Each one of these is going to get a knob on it so that you can wind it up, or so that you can wind it up before you weave. This, of course, is winding up after you've woven it. I 3D printed these, and these are the same diameter as the dowel. I've measured how deep that hole is with a caliper, so now I have to mark that on this dowel like so. Then we can put the dowel through the hole and then we'll just push it through till that line just shows up, and I'll leave a little bit extra room. And then over on this end I can mark where I need to cut it off, and I'm going to leave it just a little bit long because it's going to get this little gear right here and this little pawl assembly that's going to go on with a spring, and what that's going to do is hold this in position as you turn it. So as you rotate it, the pawls will catch on the gear and keep it locked in place so it doesn't back up. The one on the other end will be the opposite way, so that you can put tension on the warp. It's really critical to keep tension on the warp as you're weaving. So you can release the pawl back here, give it a couple cranks up as you've woven some stuff and you need to make more room to work. And then this will be locked in place, and you can click it until you get just the right amount of tension you want, and then continue your work. So this gets pushed on to the end of the dowel, and then a screw is going to go into it. And I want to pilot drill a hole here and on the other end for the gear to go. And to do that perfectly in the center, I'm going to go put this on my metal lathe, and then I'm just going to drill a pilot hole in there. The dowels are pilot drilled, and now I can put my round knob onto it. There we go. And then we're going to run a number 10 Phillips screw into there. Get a nice flush surface there. Perfect. So I have pre-drilled my little gear, the pawl gear that is going to go on these, and these definitely have to be oriented a certain way. As you can see, the two gears are opposite each other with the teeth, right? So the one at the front, this one here, I want this to be able to rotate that way, but I don't want it to be able to rotate counterclockwise until I release the mechanism that's going to go on there. So that means that the gear, the pointy part, needs to rotate like that. So if that pawl is going to bump against it, it's not going to rotate backwards until I release it, but it will be able to rotate this way. So this one goes here, the other one goes at the back. So let's mount that up with a number 10 screw. These holes are just a little tight. The screw doesn't just push right in, but okay, now let's go ahead and screw that in place. Everything's mounted up, and I need to now install the pawl, which will pivot on that point right there. When you release it, then this can rotate. When it engages, it cannot rotate. So I need to mount this with probably just a small nail right there. And then a little spring is going to go in. There's a hole right there. There's a little spring going to go in that, and then it's going to attach over here to another little pin so that it has spring tension on it. Little tiny copper nail. Yes. Got another nail here. I just pre-drilled a hole to get it started. That's where the spring is going to attach. Let's see how that worked out. I'm gonna bend it back a little bit. Hook the spring in the hole. I drilled a hole in this just to add another screw to make sure that spring does not come out, because it's just sitting in that hole and it could get bumped and come flying out. That wouldn't be any fun. So easy enough to just add this little bitty screw. There we go, it's all set. Clickety click, works fine. You want to release it, you just do that. You can turn it back the other way. Excellent. Alright, I want to explain a little more about this stuff. TexSolve, Texsolv. It's a cord
that is braided in such a way where it's got these places where you can put one of these pegs. I 3D printed these. You can buy these too. A place called the Woolery sells this stuff, and it's just for stringing up looms. So the way it works is you push this peg through, and the little tabs on it lock it into place. Then what you can do is loop it around something, push it through another one of the openings, and now you've got something locked into place, but not a knot. So later, if you want to change things, you can just pull it all back off. Right? So let me get this one back off. I've got one installed already on that shaft, and I'm going to put one over on this side, and then we have to put two more on the bottom, and then this will attach to this dowel, and as you rotate this, what you're going to do is move the shafts up and down, and the way that the warp runs through, that will allow the warp to do that thing where it goes like this to create a shed so you can weave. Yay! There we go. We've got a couple of screws holding these in place. I got the lower piece of Texsolve on, so now my counterbalance loom is actually doing its thing. How about that? Last thing that we have to do is install the aprons, and that would be this dowel that goes on here. It's going to be held on with a piece of the Texsolve with a leader about like that. The reason for this is where you tie off the warp when you're loading it onto the loom. So you just do like a girth hitch on it, run it through the shafts and then up to the front, and then on the front you would attach it the same way on the front apron. So I've got to attach this in a way where it doesn't slip and slide around. So I think what I'm going to do is put this on my metal lathe and just put a little V groove right there, and then when I slide the Texsolve over it, it'll kind of lock into that groove. There we go, nice little groove in there. So I'm going to mark where that ends up on the dowel here. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. So let's see, one right there, one right there. So on this mark, what I'm going to do is drill a hole straight through the dowel. I'm going to run a piece of Texsolve through, bring it back like this, and then loop it through itself with a girth hitch. My drill has been doing strange things. So let's push this open a little. We're going to run it back through that hole. And then just pull on it. There we go. We got that locked into place. Let's put the other one in. Oh, that one's going to make it through without the help of a screwdriver. And we put the dowel through the loop, which just barely fits, so it should end up locked right in nice and tight. That is excellent. Oh, that is a beautiful thing. There we go. That's the rear apron installed. Repeat the whole procedure on the front. There we go, one completed 8-inch tabletop or laptop loom, ready to be dressed or warped. All set, ready to go. Merry Christmas, Lisa. Well, that was fun. First project from the woodworking bench. Nice little loom. I'm sure Lisa's going to enjoy this. It's a nice sturdy little loom, easy to carry along on a little trip somewhere if you're traveling. All right, well, that was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
hit the bell so you get a notification when more videos come up, and there will be more. So until next time.